Google avoided worst-case penalties in its antitrust case. A federal judge ruled the company will not have to sell its Chrome browser or its Android operating system. This is the culmination of a 5-year legal action in Judge Mehta's federal court. Now, the judge did rule that Google cannot pay to be the exclusive search engine on devices and will have to share its search data with rival companies to level the playing field after operating as a monopoly for nearly 2 decades. Judge Mehta's decision on penalties is more along the lines of what Google wanted than what the DOJ wanted. And his stated rationale acknowledged how much the search engine marketplace has changed since the DOJ filed the case because of advances in AI. Tech companies are racing against each other and in some cases against other countries to build out their AI operations. But it's a racetrack study with legal challenges, some vulnerabilities, potential exposure from antitrust to privacy to intellectual property rights. Each case has huge implications. And with us to talk about all of that is AI expert and professor of law and public policy at Pepperdine, Dr. Greg McNeil, a frequent voice and guest on this show, Dr. McNeil, because we need some guidance when it comes to what's happening in the AI and tech world. Great to have you back.
Great to be here. Thank you.
We weren't really planning on this decision coming down today when we booked you, and we're happy to talk about it. I mean, it's very interesting for Google at the end of 5 years and what the judge said about the penalties and why they're not as stiff as the DOJ wanted. What was your takeaway?
I mean, one of the most interesting things for me was that the advancements in AI sort of saved Google from the nuclear option, which was sell the Chrome browser and break the company up. And it almost seems like because now there is emergent competition from people who now they might have Googled something before, and now they'll go into some chatbot and type something in and get an answer. And that evolution has created a more competitive marketplace. So that was sort of one of the big surprising developments in the last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the judge said there are strong reasons not to jolt the system and to allow market forces to do the work. In other words, as you say, AI is eating Google's lunch a little bit with search. That is a diminishing kind of avenue for revenue for Google, maybe, and for all these companies. And Google is potentially a player in what's happening with AI, right?
Yeah, so I think the critics here, or maybe the government's position, would be Google's lunch is not really being eaten here because every time people go to Google something now, they get the Google summary, sort of Gemini summary of results. Right. And so aren't we just instantiating them a little bit more? I think when you listen to the leading venture capitalists, like the folks at Andreessen Horowitz, they think all of the incumbents are going to go away in a few years, that this is going to be disrupted. Yeah,
and it tips up what's coming down the pike with AI. But we see here, from an antitrust standpoint, not good for Google, obviously. But when we think about AI and antitrust, does this have any implications? Because obviously tech companies have these old legacy businesses, and then they're shifting to AI. Does any of this feel like precedent or might influence the AI antitrust?
So Anthropic's position in the case, they filed a brief in the case, and what they said was like, listen, these exclusive deals that Google have prevent us from even making a search deal with other companies. Perplexity came in too. Perplexity wanted to buy the Chrome browser, and they also filed a brief in the case and said, listen, we tried to get on Motorola phones, and we couldn't even get on Motorola phones to be searched for them because Google had all of these exclusive deals. So taking away those exclusive deals might now actually foster competition. It'll let people catch up after that 20 years of monopolistic behavior on the part of Google.
Google didn't want to lose a lot of money here, in part because they want to hold on to that cash to be a part of what's happening with AI. You think about Microsoft being bound up in its cases back when Apple was releasing the iPhone, Microsoft was fighting its antitrust battles and didn't get to participate in that way. So Google really wants to be at the table here. So maybe they got that a little bit. And this, in some sense, is pro the company being a part of what we're seeing in AI. As Judge Mehta said, allowed the market to do its thing. You brought up Anthropic. And it's interesting because there's another case we can talk about. A summary judgment goes essentially against Anthropic. And then there's, well, tell us a bit about what it is, because it's about fair use, and it's also about potentially $1 trillion in damages.
So that's the really important part here. Anthropic sees that the class is basically certified against them. They're looking and they're saying, wait a second, if this thing goes to trial, or if we lose on statutory damages, which would total up to $1 trillion, it's going to destroy us. We're done.
And Dr.
so they
Menil,
settled.
And let's tell the folks at home what this case is about. It's about authors who are saying Anthropic has been training its model on a bunch of our books, and we are saying that they are violating our property rights. And the summary judgment says, hey, it was actually fair use. Why did the judge say it was fair use and that Anthropic was allowed to use these books?
So they said it was fair use, but then the judge had a serious problem with the items that were pirated.
Right.
And those were the people who were able to go forward. Right. And when you tally that up, you're looking at the $1 trillion worth of damages. Right. So that was where Anthropic looks at it and says, you know what? Easier for us to pay for these people to go away than to run the risk that our company goes away entirely. In fact, today, Claude announced that they raised $18 billion at a $183 billion valuation. So, like, the money's out there for them as a company, and they don't need to be tripped up by this.
But this fair use thing is tough for rights holders of IP. They didn't like this, right? Because they say, well, what about our rights to hold on to our books? I mean, talk about what fair use means for the folks at home. There's essentially 4 prongs, right? Transformation of the work is one of them. The effect on the marketplace is another. Just talk to us about it.
So in this case, and then also in a case involving Meta, the effect on the marketplace was really the important part. And so this is the type of thing that one of the judges said, we're jumping to the conclusion here of whether or not this is fair use by focusing on the effect on the marketplace question. The two are very interrelated. And so the judge in this case wanted to look at it, was really focused on the pirated material. The judge in a different case involving Meta looked and said, yeah, the material was pirated, but you can't convince me that that affected the marketplace at all. And so the focus there was about, like, is there really a marketplace for digitized books and licensing them? I think there is. Yeah. Right?
And we think about AI slop. I mean, that's kind of what the judge was getting at, too. I mean, if you allow a lot of these AI-created books that are feasting on previous books of other human right holders, and then you dilute and flood the marketplace, that creates competition issues.
It creates, not only does it create competition issues, but one of the other things is if the information is not transformed, right? That's a really important part here that we're dealing with fair use. And let's say the Claude AI or Meta's version of AI or any of the other ones comes about and then outputs directly the contents of the book, they haven't transformed anything there. They've taken pirated and they've given it to the consumer. That dilutes the market.
Now, the pirated thing creates big damages in the Anthropic case, and that's why Anthropic settles. And you're seeing new lawsuits trying to claim that their rights and their books have been, or their music has been pirated to try and get at that money. But where do we sit now with fair use between these two lawsuits? What does it say for precedent and for rights holders as we see these AI companies hoovering up all this data?
So it's interesting you say, what do we see next? Because the music publishers, as they're described in all the journalism around this, are coming fast on the heels for Anthropic. So they're looking and they're saying, oh, the piracy thing was really important.
There's money
We're
there.
Coming in here too. We're going to make the same claim, and you're going to need to either pay up in a settlement, or we're going to go to trial on it.
But the piracy thing doesn't protect your right as a creator, right? It's more about how you obtained it. It's not about the transformational part of it.
Right. So the piracy part is only step one. It makes it more likely that we're in the box. But then, as we saw in the Meta case, there still needs to be an analysis of whether or not there was transformation, whether or not there was impact on the market. So there are a lot of hurdles that people still have to go through. It's not as simple as what you might hear on Twitter or on Facebook or somewhere else, which is like, all you're doing is scooping things up and creating stuff based on other people's works. That's step one.
That's step one. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, you think about a potential $1 trillion exposure to Anthropic, which could potentially bankrupt the company. You do have to wonder about the valuations of the AI companies or the reasons that they're settling them or fighting them. It's so interesting. We're just scratching the surface. Have you back to talk more about it.
Would love to.
All right, it's great. Dr. Greg McNeil, an expert in AI, tech, and so much more when it comes to what's happening in the tech space. And it's not just AI, as we talked about, search engines as well. It's these big companies that are fighting these lawsuits and questions about valuation in the process.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage. And click the subscribe button here. You can also download our app and watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.